I am on a journey to financial independence, and a question I get fairly often is, why don't I just move to cut down on my cost of living? Right now, I'm based in Manhattan, which, according to Investopedia, is the #1 most expensive city in the United States, and I would have to agree with that. So it's a fair question when people ask on other videos why I don't just move. Again, it's a fair question. If pursuing financial independence was my only goal and the only thing I had to live for, then yeah, I would move and that would be a no-brainer. But I have other goals and priorities in my life. Financial independence is very important, but I do have other things that I prioritize as well in my life. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of those goals and priorities, how I came to be in this area, how did I end up being based in Manhattan, and things that I thought about doing, we together, my family have thought about doing, and moves we potentially might make in the future. So for anyone that's been asking why I don't just move, this is the video that explains that. So let me just disclaim by saying at the beginning, I take full responsibility for my life and for where I've ended up. Nobody can make me do anything I don't want to do. No one can make you do anything you don't want to do. But there are always sort of considerations in every decision that you or that I make, right? So that's my disclaimer to say, again, I take full responsibility for my choices. Starting with the history, how did I come to be based in Manhattan? Very simply, I married into it. My husband owns property in Manhattan. He owns his co-op. And how he kind of came into that, not to tell too much of his story, is he was working in Manhattan at the time and he decided to buy because, as he explained it to me, it wasn't an investment at all. It was to guarantee that your rent won't go up, which is fair. He has lived there in 2025, it will be 10 years. So he moved in 2015. And the place is amazing. It's beautiful. The building that we now live in is gorgeous. It's a doorman building. There's a health club attached to it. It's very convenient. And we're on a high floor, so we've got a great view. It is also very compact. So there are 3 of us now living in a 1-bedroom apartment. There's an in-unit washer dryer, which is amazing. Very convenient. And there are huge pros to living in the city. We are within walkable distance to everything you could possibly need. I mean, everything you need is within like a 5-block radius. I haven't had to take a subway if I didn't want to. I don't need to take a subway anywhere if I don't want to. So it is extremely convenient. And that's kind of I'm sure those were selling points to him. It's walks, it's steps from Central Park. And it's just a beautiful, very family friendly, almost suburban as you can possibly get living in the city. So that's how he came to be there, and then that's how I came to be there with him, and that's how our child, again, ended up being there. So that's kind of the history of how we ended up in Manhattan, is because he was working there and could afford to buy in Manhattan, because not many people can. But again, as he explained it, there's no bones about it. It was not an investment. It was simply to be close to his work at the time. Fair enough. So again, when people ask, why don't you just move? The short answer to that is that Manhattan real estate is very volatile. You can sell at any point, but would you get back to recoup your initial investment is the question, and that's sort of the process. Also, if you know anything about the co-op buying process, it's extremely rigorous. It's ridiculously rigorous, and I'm sure that after undergoing that, he's like, I don't want to go anywhere for at least another 10 years. So those 2 things together are the immediate, why don't you just pick up and move? Be very, very challenging to do that. Not impossible, but challenging. So that's the immediate why we don't move. And that kind of also goes into priorities and where do we see ourselves in 10 years, which is a fair question, because that will kind of inform the next decisions that we make in life. I was watching a TV show and I heard the quote, "Geography is destiny," and it's actually from a book by Ian. It's from a book, or I'm sure that's just kind of an adage that's been passed down. To an extent, I believe that. And for me, raising my child in Manhattan is just unbelievable. I think to have that exposure at such a young age is priceless, I think. So that's something that I feel very privileged to do. That said, it does impede progress toward financial independence. I mean, that's something that I have showed on this channel. It's out of control. I would say, so it costs on average about 125% more to live in the city than it does to live anywhere else. And that's accurate. And I don't think about this often because of my other priorities, but I do think about how that we could be putting more progress toward financial independence. So that said, what thoughts and considerations for the future? I also want to add that something I wish we could do is like an Airbnb. We cannot, for a co-op, you can't put your home on any type of like home sharing website. And we might be able to sublet, but it's almost as rigorous as buying. It is, the process to sublet your space is almost as rigorous as buying, because my husband did that for a year before he bought in this area. And you need to submit the exact same financial documentation and references and all of that to the co-op board to be approved before you're allowed for the tenant to be approved. And it's only for a year at a time, and the tenant also needs to be approved. So that's kind of a preface as well when we think about our future plans. So thoughts and considerations for the future. And these are my priorities. My number one priority is spending healthy quality time with family. I think it is so important to build that sort of healthy interdependence for growth. I think it's just, I can't pay for the fact that my child gets to spend so much time with family and healthy, productive time with family. It's, I can't pay for that. So it's very important to be in this area, which happens to be, again, a very high cost of living area. So that's my number one priority. We are 2 hours from both sets of grandparents. So that is extremely, extremely important, which is why we would not be inclined to do something like move to Portugal or move to Costa Rica. To the people that do that and achieve financial independence in 5 years, 10 years, you too can move offshore and move abroad and achieve financial independence. Yes, but at what cost? Because for me, there's only so many years that we will have with our parents, and it's that our parents would have with our children. It's so important to me to be close to family because I didn't grow up. Let me say, my mother and her mother had a very different relationship than my mother and I have. So I don't know how much benefit that would have been, but I think it's priceless to grow up near family. That's priority number one. Financial security and experiences are priorities 2 and 3, and those kind of go back and forth because, again, time is the one non-renewable resource. So time is something that we will never get back. At the same time, we're going to get older, and I don't want to die on the Walmart floor. I've been watching a lot of Caleb Hammer, so I don't want to die on the Walmart floor having to work until I'm 80 years old. So that's something that I also think about. So experiences and financial responsibility kind of go back and forth. So here's what we've considered potentially doing in the future, and these are some considerations that we have going forward. Because my husband's family, his father lives in Delaware, and that's something we've thought about. And the cost of living is much lower in Delaware. And initially I thought, let's just move to Delaware, and I would have done it in a heartbeat. At this point in my life with my child, I am very hesitant to move farther away from my mother, who is just an invaluable help with my child. My husband's father loves our child. He's not he's a man. I think that he's a great, he's my husband's father. But I think that my mother is just naturally equipped to kind of help out with a baby. She's in early childhood, has a master's in early childhood. She ran her own daycare. It's just tremendously helpful to have her help at this point. So moving further away from her would be financially difficult. Although I do compensate her for her services. So I don't even want to, it's like, sometimes I think, I'm freeloading off my mother, and I'm like, okay. I also pay her utilities and car insurance. I'm like, okay, I think it's a fair trade. And she housed me when I was getting my bearings. So I feel like it's a fair trade for both of us. So things we've considered is moving to Delaware. We've considered maybe purchasing a house in an area further afield in New Jersey. So these are kind of things that we've thought about. Maybe looking at Queens, maybe looking at in Westchester County. We've thought about all these things. not that big of a savings in any of the outer boroughs or Westchester, really not in New Jersey either, unless you go further south, in which case these are the things that we're also mindful of as we look at a new space, and that would be the school districts. Because, I mean, of course, you have a kid and you're thinking about the public school districts. Whether or not you actually send them to that school can actually end up being a question. But you want to be in an area that has a decent school district, which, growing up in this area, the area that I'm in now, the school district, there are 3, 4, 5 school districts that are on the top 100. I mean, we've got blue ribbon schools, nationwide blue ribbon schools, top 10 in the nation. So that's something that I didn't appreciate when I was growing up, and I thought that the pressure was a lot and everyone around me was entitled and rich and spoiled. I'm like, yes, I did think that. Now I realize, wow, there's so many opportunities that come with that. So that's a consideration for sure. The second one is friends that you would make and people that you would be exposed to. The third consideration, again, is proximity to family. And the fourth is sort of the mindsets that you would develop being in this area. So these are all the things that we're considering in our next move. And it's always a question where we go from here. And it will actually be interesting to look back on this in 5 years and say, okay, well, where did we end up as our family grows and changes? Good Lord willing, who knows? So that's sort of the long and the short answer, the short and the long answer of why I don't just move. And we'll see where that goes. We'll see where this financial independence journey takes us, where potential new job opportunities might take us. Who knows? So I hope this has cleared up any questions. So I'm happy to have this video as a resource that I can just say, check out the video, why I don't move. And I thank everyone, again, if you've watched this far, I thank you. And I thank you for kind of your interest in my journey. And I hope that this journey has been helpful to you. Again, I hope to talk to people that have made financial mistakes in the past, because that is certainly my story. I am not someone that grew up with a blameless financial past. And I have had very little help from family, aside from love and sort of an upbringing. What I would consider to be a good upbringing, a selfless upbringing. I have had no financial help from family. So I think that that's also important to consider. And that's kind of what I aim. Everyone aims to give their children more than they had, right? So, or to build a legacy, a financial legacy for their family. So that's the aim and that's the goal right now. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful and I hope you keep watching. Bye.